Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Queensland rainfall and tropical low situation, and then we're going to go over west and have a look at some West Australian cyclone activity that could play a big role in shaping how the Queensland activity wraps itself up. If you are brand new to the channel, then please do consider subscribing and leave a like on the video while you're at it, and click the join button down below to become an official channel member. So headlining today's update, we've got far northern Queensland tropical lows. We've got a strengthening monsoon trough located right now over the Gulf of Carpentaria, but it's going to be extending itself over the Cape York Peninsula and into the northern parts of the Coral Sea, and it's expected to fire off at least one tropical low this coming week and into next weekend, which does have the potential to become a tropical cyclone, and more tropical lows are also possible from this system. Let's jump straight into the forecast right now. So you can see around northern Cairns and northern Queensland, a lot of showery activity, speckly shower activity is still moving through, and that's bringing some heavier than usual showers throughout the rest of today. It should be the rest of this morning that really does get the worst of the shower activity before the rainfall does start to ease off by later tonight into later this afternoon, I would say, from anywhere north of Townsville up towards Cairns, and then the rainfall north of Cairns will start to be picking up from tomorrow morning. They've had a lot of rainfall there already. I'm seeing constant comments of just heavy, consistent showers in some places, followed by by sunshine rather, and then more showers later on in the afternoon. They're dumping up to 100 millimeters in a couple of hours. So there's been quite a lot of rainfall in this corner of Australia, which is to be expected for this time of the year, but it's still a flooding concern. There are some rivers already approaching the moderate flooding alerts, so there's certainly some dangerous waterways starting to gather momentum right now. And if you are living in a flood-prone area, you're traveling through a flood-prone area, then it's advisable that you don't go near dangerous floodwaters, even if you want to get good photos or something. Don't cross flooded rivers, because these rivers will swell to many times their average depth as this rainfall really does pick up, and you can see it really does pick up tomorrow across the Cape York Peninsula, and this is associated with the developing monsoon. Monday as well, we'll see quite a bit of rainfall up there, and also into the Northern Territory as well. Darwin could be seeing some significant rainfall totals over the coming couple of days as we see a tropical low developing over the West Australian waters, but I will cover that one later on in the video. It's not as important or as threatening as the Queensland situation. The Queensland cyclone, mind you, as we just play this forecast run through until about Thursday, it's not expected to get very strong, and there's still a lot of model uncertainty surrounding it. And I feel like I need to clarify the fact that this is just a forecast. It's not what's exactly going to be happening. This is just an idea of what's likely going to be happening, and it's a blend of all major forecast models, so it is the most accurate forecast that you can possibly give on these systems. It's very difficult to forecast tropical cyclones beyond the 5-day forecast period, but now we're really starting to get these details outlined. A tropical low forming by Thursday afternoon, which you can see now deeper into the Coral Sea. I do believe the forecast models are going to continue with this easterly shift, and we're going to end up with a tropical cyclone over New Caledonia or Vanuatu that's not going to be an Australian threat. I think I did mention that a couple of days ago, but I do think that that's what's going to be happening here, because this tropical low here really doesn't get itself going before we see the really concentrated tropical low activity starting to form just towards the northeast of Cairns, I'd say, and then another tropical low forming around the Cape York Peninsula by around next weekend. So again, pushed back another day, this forecast, which is basically just models of saying we don't know what's going on, so we're going to push the forecast back even more. Still though, it's going to be the rainfall threat that's really caught my eye here. We're not expecting Category 2 or Category 3 strength tropical cyclones. We're expecting strong tropical lows or Category 1s here, which have the potential to dump some really heavy rainfall totals. We're talking in excess of 800 millimeters over the next 5 to 10 days. Up in far northern Queensland and across the Cape York Peninsula. So again, the wind threat is not there. The storm surge threat it's there, but it's really not a big concern. But the rainfall threat, on top of the flooded catchments that we've already got up in far northern Queensland with Cyclone Jasper, Cyclone Kirrily, and a bunch of other rainfall events that have moved through up here, we're really looking at for quite a concerning amount of rainfall. An extra 1,000 millimeters around Cairns is rainfall that they do not need whatsoever, and there are forecasts that are suggesting that that's possible. Now, I know a couple of you in the comments are already thinking 3 tropical lows in, a 3-day time period, all in the Coral Sea. That's impossible. That's wild. And it is wild. It is. It's not impossible, but it is wild. What we're going to be seeing is a really strong monsoon trough extending down here, which will have concentrated tropical lows in it. So 3 tropical lows is not unheard of, but 3 tropical cyclones out of these tropical lows, impossible. It's not going to happen here. We could see 1 tropical cyclone, most likely going to be the one on the back end of the system. So this one come down here. But again, it's just too far out in the future to really get an idea on what's going to be going on. And then these two tropical lows, if they do become cyclones, will be sheared to tears. They'll be having a very hard time in an unfavourable environment as they move towards New Caledonia and Vanuatu. So that's an outline of what we're expecting in terms of tropical cyclone activity. But what does this mean for far northern Queensland? What rainfall is expected? What storm surge? What winds are expected? Well, let's talk about that right now. And I'm going to go really into depth over the next 10 days, taking it day by day for far northern Queensland, because there's a lot of factors here to break down. And it's also quite hard to get an accurate zoom on windy. So I'm going to be using this zoom here. You've got areas down towards Mackay, up to Cairns through here, Weipa up here, Thursday Island, and then we're also looking at Darwin as well, because Darwin itself could be seeing up to 5 to 800 millimetres as well over the next 10 days. So the rest of Saturday looking fairly wet around the Cairns area, especially down towards Innisfail, Tully and Lucinda. Thunderstorm activity across the Northern Territory and the Cape York Peninsula, same for Sunday really, but the rainfall around Cairns and Townsville moves further north and it contracts to areas north of Cooktown before drying out completely basically Sunday night, but still speckly showers Sunday through to Monday and also through to Tuesday as well. They just won't be as heavy and as consistent as previously before we enter a little bit more of a dry patch until about Thursday or Friday. But again, this rainfall really does contract much further north here, and we're looking out for significant rainfall totals across the Cape York Peninsula. Now, another question that I feel like could be asked as well is I've always been using the Access G3 model for these sort of updates. Well, that's because we're looking at tropical lows or tropical thunderstorm activity. Now we're talking about tropical lows and potential tropical cyclones, so I rather using the Eastern WF model. It just tends to get a more accurate picture in terms of where the storms are going to be located and how strong they are going to be. The Access G3, for comparison, always blows up a tropical cyclone, even if one's not expected. And they sometimes make them very strong as well, and we'll talk about that with the WA system in just a little bit. The Access G3 is generally just a little bit more unreliable than the Eastern WF model. Now the GFS is calling for basically nothing apart from a weak monsoon trough to develop and a tropical low down over some of the islands through here. That might be close to Willis Island at that point. But again, I just don't think the GFS model has it right now. They've not been accurate at all over the past couple of days in terms of rainfall. So I just don't think the GFS model is it right now. But yeah, taking it through next weekend, these storms move through the Cape York Peninsula and they do dump quite a lot of rainfall. I think it's now time to check out rainfall accumulation over the next 3 days, at least for Cairns and Innisfail, Tully. A further 100 millimetres is expected. In the wettest of wettest locations, maybe up towards 250 millimetres, but it's nothing crazy compared to the 250 millimetres that some places have been picking up over the past 4 days straight. So significant rainfall is just starting to ease off the area right now. Darwin is going to be the focus for the next 5 days. I'd say up to 200 millimetres could be falling around the Darwin area, and that's also reciprocated amongst the Access G3 model and the Eastern WF. So rainfall for the next 5 days, lock it in. It's a very accurate and coherent forecast between the Eastern WF and the Access G3 model, which are two very different models in how they predict weather, but they generally come out with the same output because of their just input data. That's a very confusing topic, and I do need to do more research on that before I can accurately comment on it. But again, between the Eastern WF and the Access G3 model, it is very, very much coherent in terms of what they are expecting. Now, over the next 10 days, again, it's also pretty similar in terms of what the forecast models are expecting. The Access G3, as you just saw there, goes a little bit crazy in certain locations. It's predicting up to 2 metres of rainfall over the open Arafura Sea. Now, that's because of the tropical cyclone passage there, but it's far northern Queensland that we're interested in right now. You can see the northern parts of the Cape York Peninsula, north of Cooktown especially, and I reckon expecting widespread totals of 200 to 300 millimetres, maybe even one or two spots of up to 400 millimetres as well as you get up towards Thursday Island, and then some of the, what are those islands? The Torres Strait Islands up here, up to 450 millimetres there. So quite a bit of rainfall expected there. Across the northern reaches of the Northern Territory, up to 400 millimetres as well. Darwin expecting 250. Melville Island as well, up to 250 as well. And I believe the majority of that will fall in the next 3 to 5 days. So it could be quite a wet period there. Down towards Cairns, that rain dome effect that we've been seeing over the past forecast runs is definitely in full swing, 50 millimetres there, but as you get up towards the Daintree Rainforest and Mossman, up towards 250 millimetres around Cape Tribulation, and then down towards Innisfail, Tully and Belen as well, 200 to 250 millimetres. This area is historically the wettest part of Australia, so it's no surprise that it is blitzing everywhere else in terms of rainfall, and there's just been places that are picking up 300 millimetres per day through here, so a lot of rainfall has been falling across far northern Queensland, but hopefully it does start to dry off, because rainfall there is just not what they need right now. They do need a nice dry winter with just a couple of rain showers here and there to keep the rainforest looking beautiful, but they don't need anything crazy on top of the 4,000 to 5,000 millimetres that some places, especially around Belen and Curve, picked up already this year. Very, very wet indeed. Down the Queensland coastline as well, as we look down towards Mackay, a further 50 to 80 millimetres can be expected there. I believe the majority of that will fall actually over the next 3 days, so we could be seeing a nice onshore flow starting to develop in around, I'd say maybe Monday or Tuesday, so watch out for some heavy showers down towards Mackay, Airlie Beach, and maybe even down towards Rockhampton as well. But between Rockhampton and down towards Bundaberg, including the Wide Bay area, it's going to be relatively dry, maybe 10 to 20 millimetres, one or two spots of 25 millimetres. Brisbane Metro as well, drying up now as we enter into March and later March as well, or mid-March, especially towards the end of the forecast period. And down the New South Wales coastline as well, nothing too crazy in terms of rainfall. And it's going to be high and dry for the desert as well, especially across New South Wales, South Australia and Queensland, except for this huge standout feature here. I mean, this is just some crazy rainfall that we're going to be seeing across the WA desert, and the majority of that, I believe, falls over the next 3 days as well, where we're talking up to 400 millimetres in the next 3 days. For areas around Rowena, down towards Eucla as well. I do believe Eucla is further towards the South Australia, Western Australia border, but again, incredibly remote part of Australia. I believe this blue rain swathe might have a population of maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people, and you're talking an area comparable in size to Tasmania with just 2,000 or 3,000 people. In fact, you're probably talking an area comparable in size to Victoria, receiving only 3,000 people. Still a lot of travelling on the air highway. And the railway, what is it, the Trans-Tasman Railway? No, it's not the Trans-Tasman Railway. I can't even remember the name. That's a bit embarrassing. But there's a railway that moves through from Norseman across into South Australia. So yeah, quite a few travellers moving through here, and definitely going to be some hazardous road conditions over the next 5 days with this very heavy amount of rainfall. And I do apologise for getting that iconic railway name lost in my head. That's a little bit embarrassing, that's for sure. We should just briefly talk about the tropical cyclone activity up in Western Australia. We've got Tropical Low 08U, which is trying to develop now near West Island. It's looking a lot better, to be frank, actually. It's got some nice convection starting to blow up now. In fact, it's actually looking quite pretty on the IR satellite imagery. And we'll be seeing how this goes over the next 24 to 48 hours as well, because if it does blow itself up quite nicely, then it might be closer to what we're thinking of it being a full-blown tropical cyclone. So it'll be interesting to see what that system does. I don't feel like it's going to get very strong at all. The eastern will be calling for maybe a Category 1, maybe a Category 2 peak at worst, and it does get a little bit close to Western Australia. It's getting closer actually with every forecast run, so it's certainly a system that we're going to have to watch, and if it does get itself right up towards the WA coastline, then it could actually be quite threatening indeed. Now, this is when I talk about why the Axis G3 model is a bad model to use for tropical cyclones sometimes. Now, it blows them up into oblivion, and I've learnt that with Cyclone Jasper and Cyclone Curlew. Those two systems taught me a lot about how these forecast models work around Australia. You can see throughout the lifespan of 08U, even though it's in a relatively inhospitable environment, it still blows up into a pretty strong tropical cyclone through Thursday, Friday, and then into Saturday. And then look at this, the tropical low just comes out of nowhere and then rapidly intensifies throughout Sunday and Monday, and becoming a severe tropical cyclone on Monday as it heads towards the WA coastline. Now, conditions are there for this tropical cyclone to rapidly intensify, but I mean, wind shear is quite high. You're looking at wind shear totals of around 20 to 30 knots out of the northeast here. That would strip a tropical cyclone apart. So the Axis G3 model hasn't taken that into account, hence why it's a slightly more inaccurate forecast model to use, and it generally spits out more inaccurate predictions on what's actually going to be happening, which is why it's a model that I'm not going to be using too often for tropical cyclone activity, and I do hope that that has made sense. I've also been seeing a lot of comments as well regarding how this is a normal wet season. That's indeed what it is. It is a normal wet season. The rainfall is average to slightly above average in some of these places, and it is actually approaching very much above average around the Cairns area, but it is a little bit of a surprise considering we were told to expect a dry wet season with an El Nino by the Bureau of Meteorology, and it just hasn't came out to that. So the forecasts have been very, very poor this year on almost everyone's part, to be fair, calling an El Nino and then having La Nina-like conditions, and for it to break down like it would in a La Nina situation, that is a little bit of a shoddy forecast, but again, no one can help that, that's for sure. Leave me a weather report for your location in the comment section down below. Here's a big thank you to all of our channel sponsors for this month. There's now 7 of you guys. Let's see if we can push that number up to 10. If you want to monetarily support the channel, this is the best way to do it. It really does help out, and it pays for all the equipment that I use, editing stuff, mobile data as well, because I make these videos on the go now. It does actually rack up to a pretty hefty bill each month, so keeping the lights on. Thank you so much everyone for supporting the channel lately. Subscribe and leave a like on the video as well if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.